Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge and Rice, a law firm with more than 500 attorneys. This morning, we're lucky to have one of them. You'll meet him coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at Puckett, Sheets & Hogan, the Grand Strand's largest independent insurance agency here on 21st Avenue North in Myrtle Beach. We're focused on transitions in the law, and we're visiting with an attorney from Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge and Rice, Culley Carson. Good morning, Culley.
Good morning, Greg.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Tremendous
Absolutely.
opportunity when we think about so many things happening. Of course, you were with us last April.
Right.
The Holiday Inn West, when you were one of the featured speakers at the first annual Computer Security Conference, 2007, which had a tremendous turnout. A lot of prominent folks like yourself in town, other great attorneys, and fascinating computer science experts. And then actually, I believe next April, the Computer Security Conference 2008, a lot of the papers already being submitted. I think that opened up September 1st, and a ton of papers coming in, a lot of posters, a lot that's going to happen. I see you're on the program committee.
Absolutely.
For the upcoming conference. How's that looking?
It's looking great. We've got a great conference and a great program for next year. Every year, I think it's just going to continue to build on itself. This area, as you know, is just, and as we talked about last spring, is just exploding, really. In all areas, in all facets, in all industries, everybody from, just sort of basic small mom and pop businesses, even non-businesses. You and I, we have concerns in data privacy and protection because the technology is going so fast these days that our ability to keep up with it in terms of what we should or we shouldn't be doing is really the challenge that lies ahead of us. So that's what we're trying to deal with, is help not only individuals but small and large companies, help them strategize for what is really a very fast-moving train here.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Speaking of fast-moving trains, Womble, Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice, that's a fast-moving train. You guys have been growing leaps and bounds over the last, it looked like I was visiting the WCSR.com website early this morning, maybe 130 years, a heck of a long time, and it has been growing just gangbusters, 500-plus attorneys now, and the multitude of offices there.
Yeah, it's just really has been growing tremendously. There's just we're in a really great area is sort of the bottom line. Our offices spread from Atlanta in the southern end to the northernmost office being Wilmington, Delaware.
Right.
And all of those offices have specific strategic purposes. Many of the offices up the I-85 corridor dealing with a lot of the manufacturing and technology. I'm in the RTP office, which is obviously technology focused. But there's just a tremendous amount of growth in this area, the southeast. But of course, our clients are not only southeast, based clients.
But
worldwide, but it's a great platform. This area is just a great platform, and there are just tons of businesses that are moving to this area. I mean, in the RTP alone, I mean, you look at Fidelity Investments, one of the biggest financial brokerage houses, in the world, is moving its corporate headquarters from Boston to the Research Triangle Park, right down the road. So it's just, you have Novartis is building a huge plant there in RTP. So there's just a tremendous amount of growth, a tremendous amount of business that's being conducted, and we're really in the epicenter of a lot of that. So it's been a great place to be.
That's fantastic, Culley. How about yourself? Are you originally from this area?
No, actually, I am originally from Durham, North Carolina, right down the road from the Triangle.
Much of the Research Triangle Park's actually in Durham County.
In Durham County, that's correct. That's correct. I mean, it's and that's one of the things that attracted me to the area to come back again. I had been in Atlanta for the last 7 years and really enjoyed Atlanta. It's a great town, but course, a very busy and bustling town, and so I decided to move back home, which was the right move for us. But it's really just been really hit the ground running there at the firm. It's just
how long have you been back in the Triangle?
Been back in the Triangle a little over a year now, a year and a half.
Good.
So, but it's been fantastic. Was in D.C. before being in Atlanta, so sort of have done the sort of big cities in the southeast, and still enjoying being back home.
I saw the Womble Carlisle Sandridge and Rice website there, a little bit about you. You're a graduate of UNC Chapel Hill there.
That's right. Class
of '94, and then the Catholic University, Columbus School of Law there in Washington, D.C. in '99. So you've been practicing, as you said, about 7, 8 years now.
That's right.
That's tremendous.
That's right.
And early on down in D.C., had you always, growing up, had you always thought you wanted to be a lawyer?
No, actually, well, I always thought I was attracted to the law and much of what lawyers do.
Right.
Enjoyed dealing with people and negotiating and just being out there to really see and experience life and people. And so that's where what initially attracted me to the law, to the legal profession. And then went to Washington, D.C., of course, and worked on Capitol Hill for a couple of years. And that really, I think, underscored my initial interest in the law, having been part of creating the laws, working on Capitol Hill, and then to move on to law school, where you're dealing more with both the creation, but also how do those laws affect ordinary people and businesses. So I've really enjoyed that sort of transition through my career, and still to this day, the most enjoyable part of what I do is dealing with people. So, and the law has really helped me been a great platform for that.
Speaking of people, Culley, early this morning I went on and did a little people search, a Google search on Culley Carson. There are not too many Culley Carsons, but there was one ahead of you.
That's right.
When I Googled Culley Carson, there's a Dr. Culley Carson there. Is any relation to you?
He is. Very close relationship. Yeah. He is my dad, and he is the third. I'm the fourth, and there's actually a fifth now. So we've got, we don't go far, stray far from the name, but it's been great. And he's still in Chapel Hill. Yes. He works in Chapel Hill. He's the chief of urology there at UNC.
Is that right? Chief of urology at UNC. That's tremendous.
That's right.
I know he'd been at Duke for many years. I saw a little bit of that information about him, and of course have known him for a long time, and a tremendous man, he and your mother both. And obviously now that you couldn't have gotten Culley the Fifth without a significant other.
Right.
You married a lawyer as well, I believe.
That's right. I married my wife, Sarah. She and I met in law school, in contracts class, actually.
Is that right? In D.C.?
Right. In D.C. That's right. We met in first year of law school, and started dating, and the rest is history.
Was it love at first sight?
It was. I mean, for me, I was.
For you.
Yeah, I was actually dating someone at the time, and so it got a little bit complicated there. But she. But as soon as I saw her across the class, I said, I need to get to know that girl.
Get rid of it.
And so, and so there was, so got to know her a little bit more in class, and then outside of class, and then, we graduated in '99, and then actually got engaged while we were in law school. And then moved down to Atlanta and got married. So it was great.
Culley the Fifth, y'all's only child?
No, we actually have two boys. Culley and William is the other. Will, we call him. Right. Two boys. Culley's 5 years old, and Will is about two, almost two. So we are. Sarah's now at home full time with them, and she's certainly keeping busy. Chasing after those boys. So.
In joining Womble Carlisle, Sandridge, and Rice, was there a particular specialty that you wanted to focus on? What had you done during your 7 years down there in Atlanta?
I was actually in-house for I was in-house the last 3 years while I was in Atlanta. I was in-house for a company, Bovis Lend Lease, which is a global construction development company.
Yes,
They
yes.
do some work here in the Grand Strand area.
Doing some part of the project, the Market Common, the
Right.
McCaffrey Interest Project on the former Myrtle Beach Air Force Base.
That's right, big project over there.
Absolutely.
They've done some work up at Tillman Golf
Tillman
and Beach
Resort.
Up there they're building. And then also, I think just down the road here to the Palace Theater. So
Is that right?
years
They did
ago,
the Palace
I think
Theater.
so.
I did
yeah.
not know that. That's true.
So they have a fairly sizable presence here in the area, and of course, the building here is just tremendous.
Astronomical.
But anyway, I worked in-house. I was in-house counsel for Bovis in our Atlanta office. The office, most of the corporate function of the company was in New York, but I was there in Atlanta. But so I served and supported basically the Southeast and Texas. Primarily, my specific duties were North and South Carolina. So got to know this area very well, and all that's going on here. It's just tremendous.
Did I see for a while you had clerked with a judge, Culley?
That was my first job out of law school. Yeah, I clerked with Judge Toby Progers, who is actually a Duke Law grad, and
that right?
Was he was a law clerk himself for on the Georgia Supreme Court, and was just a tremendous mentor. He's a tremendous judge, and I still to this day, look back and am very thankful for the lessons that he was able to teach me as a young lawyer. So that was a tremendous experience, getting to see from behind the bench what it is that judges look for as a lawyer and go through and have to deal with, both on the criminal side as well as on the civil side. We had both criminal in our court. We had criminal and civil litigation.
Down in Georgia.
In Georgia, right outside of Atlanta, a place called Marietta, Georgia. So we had some pretty amazing cases. I remember one case in particular where a woman who was actually an executive with, I think, IBM, or a large company anyway, she had been convicted of, or she had been accused of shoplifting, and the case was being tried right before the Christmas holiday, and her lawyer got up and and she most of those kind of cases, shoplifting cases, settle. You never actually try a shoplifting case.
Right, yeah.
So it was very unusual to actually have one tried it, and then obviously the nature of the status of the defendant was very unusual. So anyway, so they tried the case, and the lawyer got up and said, in his closing argument, said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a time of charity. It's a time of forgiveness.
Oh my!
And as God said, and then he quoted a biblical verse.
Right.
This is what you ought to do. Well, the jury was out, and in a matter of about an hour, they came back guilty.
Oh yeah.
And so, after, usually in these situations, the judge and usually the attorneys go back and they call it poll the jury. So they ask the jury, sort of what was going on, what in the jury's deliberations, why did you come out with that verdict?
Right.
And they basically said, we were with you on the Christmas theme. We felt like that was, absolutely appropriate. But then you put in the Bible verse.
Right.
And we just felt like that was going over the line. And so we convicted your client.
Wow.
And to me, it was astonishing just by the fact that here you have somebody being convicted principally on, one, the closing argument, and two, sort of the choice of the lawyer in his words.
Right.
So not necessarily hinging on the guilt or the innocence of the defendant, but instead on how the lawyer acted. So that was really a profound sort of experience for me to see that what we say and do has a very profound impact on your clients and the public at large. Clearly lawyer jokes are something you deal with as a lawyer, but my judge was very adamant about that. As a lawyer, you have a very solemn obligation to the public. So that's what I've sort of tried to use as my.
That's a great point. Other
So-
people that are in the limelight, I think you had worked on the Hill you mentioned before law school, and
That's right.
surely elected officials, the 435 congressmen, the 100 U.S. senators, they're constantly under the spotlight.
Yeah.
What was that like, the thrill of being there? Was it thrilling to be there on the Hill?
It was absolutely thrilling. I mean, to look back now and to see what I saw with my eyes being written into the history books is really what happened, and it's an amazing experience. I mean, I really have always said that really all people of college age, if they could have that experience, they ought to take it, because it's just tremendous. Because you go up there and here you are in a committee room, and for instance, I was in a committee room in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, of which I worked in a couple of different occasions. Janet Reno was coming in to give testimony on at that time the big issue was child abductions, and how do we deal with these abductions, and how do we deal with this, with other countries that people, if they abduct a child here in the U.S., if they're married, for instance, and they take that was usually the case, they were married, a U.S. national and a foreign national get married, and then the foreign national takes their child back to their home country. And so then how do we go back? How do we go and get that child? Because in some instances, those governments were not receptive to our going in and trying to get those children. So to hear that kind of testimony, to see those people there, of course, the Whitewater controversy was also hot in the news. And
during your tenure there.
That's right, and my senator was on that committee, the Whitewater Committee. So
which senator was that?
That was Senator Locke Faircloth from North Carolina.
North Carolina, great.
At the time, the junior senator from North Carolina, but he, because at that time that was also when you had the change in 1994, when you had the change from a primarily Democratic Congress to a Republican, the contract with America, Newt Gingrich, and all of that. So those were sort of really interesting times to be up there on Capitol Hill. I can only imagine that now is similarly a fascinating time to be up there.
Leading up to big presidential elections, and of course the changeover from the Republican majority to the Democrats.
Changing back to the Democrats,
exactly.
right? That's
Is
right.
that the first time since '94 it's changed?
I think the Senate, has gone one way or the other, but not to have them both. And that's always the interesting, because the typical sort of party spin on a lot of these things as well. We only have one house or the other, but when you have two, there really isn't a debate as to whether you can or whose ball the court the court is in. So in this case, it's in the Democratic Congress's control. Of course, it's been in the Republican Congress's control, and we had a Republican president. So, there's a lot of discussion around that whole. But really seeing all of that, seeing how our government works, and it was really just a fascinating experience.
You really covered all bases there, Culley, on the legal side. Having been on the Hill for a long time, obviously having then clerked with a judge, experienced both the legislative branch, the judicial branch. What's left? I guess the executive branch.
Well, I'm here to say that I'm, announcing my candidacy for the President of the United States. I guess that's the only thing that's left.
That's all that's
no, I think that's a little bit premature.
We're having the presidential debates here, on January 10th.
Right.
The Republican Party will be having theirs here. We're hopeful the Congressional Black Caucus will wrap up. Congressman Clyburn has been here to announce if it's happening, depending on when the date is. It'll be happening here in Myrtle Beach. So we hopefully will have two U.S. presidential debates, at least one January 10th, but hopefully two here.
That would be fantastic.
In Myrtle Beach in January, February time period. Yeah, which could be tremendous.
Yeah. Well, this is going to be a really interesting. Of course, and that's the other thing. I think looking back, having being, because really you can divide the world now into pre-2001 and post-2001, and so I think now is a really pivotal time in our nation's history to determine which direction we're going to go and how we're going to deal with this sort of this faceless enemy that we have to deal with overseas. So it'll be really interesting. The debate will be really interesting on both sides of the aisle. We
don't think about that often, or at least obviously this is a community affairs show. I don't think we sit back and think often enough about a pre-9/11, a pre-2001 and a post-2001, since we're focused on topics of local or regional interest as opposed to when you point out Congress and the folks in the executive branch are focused on worldwide and focused on everything that impacts America. That's a very good point.
Yeah, well,
very good point.
There is, I mean, and all of that really does affect us in our daily lives. We don't necessarily think about it. Getting on, the plane here at Myrtle Beach Airport,
right.
Things have changed since
right.
2001, and just really, there's so much that's pervasive throughout our country now in terms of privacy. And data protection, and a lot of the reasons behind a lot of those efforts that we're taking a look at have implications when you talk about security and what you can or can't sell, what kind of technology you can, send overseas, or that it's allowed to come into this country. So there are a lot of there are a lot of implications from 2001 that go beyond just sort of the war in Iraq.
That's a very good point. Very good point. So much going on, and obviously in your practice, Culley, we want to talk a little about green building, some recent developments in privacy and IP law, intellectual property law. At the same time, obviously, when we're thinking about green buildings, I saw 6 words this morning: leadership and energy and environmental design, which turned into an acronym, LEED. What's that all about?
LEED is it's basically a set of basic sort of requirements that this organization called the U.S. Green Building Council has come up with, and it's basically a set of criteria for. Really, it started out as on the commercial side, commercial construction.
Right.
So if you're going to build a commercial construction, a building, an office building, for instance, this group sets out the criteria for what would be environmentally friendly sort of building.
Right.
And when they say environmentally friendly, they're not just talking about, the materials that go into the construction are clearly important, but also the efficiency of those materials and the systems. Everything from collecting the rainwater and the runoff water from the building and spreading that out, using that as your irrigation system, so that you're not having to then waste county or city water to pump it out. I would imagine that would be a particularly useful thing here in this area. But it's really it started in the commercial construction area, and is slowly catching on. I think the problem to date has been construction using the LEED criteria is, according to industry analysts, about 10% more than the average. The normal price.
10% more expensive.
10% more expensive to get the LEED certification, which is what you want to get, to say you have a LEED certified building. And the benefits there are clearly, perception to your customers. If your customers value you as sort of a environmentally conscious company, then that's going to be a value to your customers. And so to be able to have that LEED certification really puts your money where your mouth is, kind of thing. And then that's really what it's been all about. But to date, most of the LEED certification has been in the area of government contracting, schools, university office buildings and the like. There hasn't been as much, especially in this area, in the way of commercial construction using LEED certification. We do have, I did take a look at, they have an online, they have a posting really of all of the LEED certified buildings and projects across the country.
Wow.
And just so we all are talking on the same page, LEED certification is certainly something that's laudable and people ought to be congratulated for. But on the other hand, there's a continuum of LEED certification. So you can be just LEED certified, and then you can be up to, I think it's platinum certified. So there's a number of levels and steps that you can go through in order to reach that. Some of the things that might be useful here might be you get credit. It's basically you get points. You get points for instance, having bicycle racks outside of your building. You get points for being close to public transportation. You get points for giving priority to hybrid vehicles. So things like that, they're basically saying that you're looking and thinking in sort of a environmentally conscious way, those types of steps, concrete steps that you might implement in your project would be steps that would get you toward, would be steps towards LEED certification.
That's fascinating, Culley.
Yeah, they're really
Aside from going ahead and increasing, the costs that are going to be incurred by doing a building that way. Let's say it's a $100 million project. It would be you could potentially do the same project and not be LEED certified for $90 million.
Right. That's right. The question is, and this is really where they're at this point, where really the change in the law is that they're trying to, government is trying to encourage this kind of building, because obviously, to the extent that we can minimize the amount of greenhouse gases that we put up, which according to this U.S. Green Building Council, buildings themselves account for the vast majority of U.S. Based greenhouse gases. So to the extent that we can minimize those, we certainly ought to encourage it.
Right.
Is their position, and so it's really one of those long-term benefits. So
Absolutely.
if you are a building owner and you think you're going to have the property for 10 or 15 years, say,
Right.
you're probably going to recoup that amount, that extra 10% in the savings that you're going to realize from less less escaping, more efficient building.
Sure.
So, and they're also, as I said, they're trying to put on to that tax incentives. The EPA has some. There was a law that was passed back in 2005, I believe, called the EPA Act, and that basically is one that again provides tax incentives for these kind of green building initiatives. So you can get some, as a builder, you can get some tax deductions and incentives for following these type of guidelines.
Culley, I hate to say it, we're going to have to get you back another time.
Absolutely.
I'm embarrassed. I think I've run over. The director's going to cut me off if I don't.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Greg, as always.
Thank you so much for coming in. We really caught up on a lot. We'll talk about some of these other issues next time we get you in. Stay tuned to more of Culley Carson, Womble Carlisle, Sandridge, and Wright. It's coming up next. We ran out of time. We didn't even have a chance to talk to Culley about his service on the board of directors for the John Avery Boys and Girls Clubs of Durham, North Carolina. Take a look. Go online, WCSR.com, the law firm's award-winning website, WCSR.com. Learn more about Culley Carson, that is. Real simple. Take the time. He's making a difference every day.